Hi everyone, my name is Jenny and welcome back to my channel. So in today's reading vlog, I am introducing this new series where I have my friends pick my TBR for me and I make a whole video dedicated to their picks. The only rule that I had given them was that they had to pick 3 books for me. And after I got in my first few recommendations, I thought to myself, maybe I should have put a little bit more strict rules around what they chose for me, because today's episode has a very interesting theme. Again, there was no theme that I gave them. It was just any 3 books that they wanted me to read. And my first feature friend is my friend Mychelé and my sister Mychelé. I talk about her a lot on my channel because I do a lot of buddy reads with her and those books end up being featured in my videos. So I thought, because I yap about her a lot, it would be a great video to introduce this entire series. Because she's my older sister, I didn't think much about her potentially choosing books that I could hate. I thought she was going to be nice about it, but the very big sister-coded personality that she has, she picked books for me that I said that I would never read. And she just thought that would be funny. So I'm going to introduce you to the 3 books that she picked for me, and then I will tell you why and my reasoning behind not wanting to read it, and then we'll kick off the vlog and read book number 1, and it'll go from there. So the first book she picked for me is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. And I never wanted to read this book. I actually did want to pick it up. I think 3 years ago when I was getting back into reading, this was a book that was consistently recommended to me, just like on the normal algorithm. And I had brought this up to some of my friends, and a lot of the people who have similar reading preferences to the way I read and how I like my character work and dynamic, they told me not to read it. And guess who one of those people were? Mychelé. Mychelé was one of the people who was like, Jenny, don't read this book, you're gonna hate it. And 4 or 5 years later, she's like, I think you should read it because it would be so funny and entertaining for me to watch you lose your mind. And so yeah, I'm reading Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Book number 2 is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Actually, Throne of Glass wasn't on my no read list. It was more so Sarah J. Maas as an author. I just had no interest in reading any of her books because especially the the Court of Thorns and Roses series, I have been completely spoiled for all of her books. So the Crescent City one, the Nesta one, all of the Feyre, that kind of dynamic. I know everything about the books because, the internet just loves to flat out tell you spoilers with no pre-warning, and so I just was never interested in reading it. And then also for the fact that I know most of her books follow the framework of Fae, and Fae, especially in a fan row setting, isn't necessarily my favorite. I don't like the weird dominant kind of characters that a lot of the men characters have, and so I was just not interested in it. I don't have anything negative to say about Sarah. I don't know her, but I know all the spoilers for her books, so I was never intrigued. But luckily for me, I have no spoilers for Throne of Glass, which is weird because I thought Throne of Glass was really popular, but I guess the Court of Thorns and Roses has more of that hype in it. And so I will be reading that in this vlog. And then the last book is Daggermouth by H.M. Wolf. And the reasoning behind me not wanting to read this book is that it is labeled as a dark dystopian romance. I don't read dark romance at all. And the idea of reading a dark romance in a dystopian world just did not seem like my thing, and so I wanted to kind of steer clear from it. But then also recently it was picked up from indie to trad publishing, and I think trad publishing, it'll come out later this year, and I kind of wanted to wait for the trad pub of this book to come out because I always hold on to the hope that when an indie author is picked up, the trad publishing house will give the author support to edit their books and help refine. There are some indie books that I have read, indie to trad publishing, that has had no sort of editing at all. And so I was hoping that that kind of story would happen with Daggermouth, where it would get a full re-edit and revision, just so that it could, be polished a little bit more. But Mychelé asked me to read it now, so I have acquired that book on KU, and I will be reading it for this vlog. But all in all, I think some interesting picks. I don't have a good feeling about Red Rising at all, but that's how the cookie crumbles. So I will let you go over to me reading Red Rising, and I don't have any hope for that one, so let the vlog begin. Hello, lovely people. We are going to talk about our first book for this reading vlog, which is Red Rising. The basic concept of this is that our main character, Darrow, is a red in this color caste system. Red is the very bottom of the pyramid, and basically him and his people, the red caste, are tasked to mine helium, and they're being told that they are making this sacrifice for the people in order to make Mars inhabitable, and they have to make this sacrifice so that future generations can live comfortably. And I'm assuming later on he finds out that this is just a big conspiracy and that the higher class people are using them as like basically slaves so that they can live more comfortably. This book I've only read 2 chapters of. One, I'm very shocked that Darrow is 16. I thought he was going to be older because I've just heard that this book is so incredibly bleak, and I think it's classified as an adult sci-fi fantasy, and I just usually make the assumption that the characters are going to be older. I don't know if there's going to be a relative time skip with Darrow. I do know, obviously, in the rest of the series, he does grow older. But yeah, I was like 16. And then he's married, and he like kind of talks about his wife, and the way he talks about his wife, I'm like, okay, not my favorite. And I would say the first 2 chapters is a hard sell because he's telling us about mining helium and how on Mars it is an incredibly uncomfortable and hot environment, and they have to wear these protective suits so that they don't burn up to a crisp. But because it's so hot, they have to consume a lot of water to keep themselves sustained as they're mining. And he's like, you drink so much water and you're sweating a lot. And obviously, when you're drinking water, you have to pee. But because they can't really stop for pee breaks, they just take a piss in their suit. Suit pisser. You're 16. Which I don't. Following teenage boys in books isn't usually my favorite. But you're going to tell me that you're pissing in your suit? I know that's like not that big of a deal. Like in the grand scheme of things, these people are being oppressed. Like that's what we need to be focusing on. That's the important part of this whole thing. But yeah, when he said he was a suit pisser, I was like, oh, okay. Thank you, Pierce Brown, for that beautiful imagery. And then Darrow himself is like, we stink. We stink so bad. We smell like piss. We smell like sweat. We smell like heat. And the fabric smell and the burn and everything, we just stink, and we're just a bunch of smelly men. And to give myself a reprieve, I think about my beautiful, stunning wife, who is just the perfect person that I've ever met in this world. And I'm like, okay, 2 chapters in, I have to remind myself he's 16, so maybe I should give him a little bit of grace. But it is giving me pause. I'm hoping that something interesting will happen and I become more engaged with the story. I think Pierce Brown, this might be his very first novel, but I feel like the rhythm of the writing feels very like staccato. It's a little bit choppy, where he's like, this is what's happening, this is what's happening, this is what's happening, and it doesn't feel like there's a natural flow to what is being told to me. So I am trying to give myself a little bit of like a let's get reoriented into the story and how it's being told. I just finished another sci-fi book, and I'm not necessarily comparing the two. The writing style just feels very jarring, and that the flow just feels so different. So I'm trying to, rewire my brain and just pick up what Pierce Brown is putting down. Hopefully tonight I can get a bit more read. I think I'm aiming to be at like 20%, and then I can give you an update. But yeah, Mychelé, hello. I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope I enjoy one of these books, because God forbid I hate all three. I just want to put this disclaimer out there that I am kind of in like an iffy mood this week because I got my wisdom teeth removed about a week and a half ago, and my dentist put me on amoxicillin, and I had a very delayed reaction to that medication. I took like a week's worth of the medication, which I was prescribed, and then 3 days after completing the medication, I had a relatively severe allergic reaction. I had like a rash starting from my hairline and down. And the thing is I'm vaccinated. I'm fully vaccinated. And when I was looking up this rash, they were telling me that it was very similar to measles. So I was like, I'm not going to just full on agree with the internet. I'm going to go get this checked. But before I decided to do that, I knew that I had tried a new product. I tried a new shampoo. And so I was like, maybe I should just take an allergy medicine. And then maybe I thought that I was having like a chemical burn because there is glycolic acid in the shampoo. And I was like, maybe the exfoliant was just too strong. And the allergy medicine didn't work. So the next day I went to the ER and the doctor was like, yeah, you're just really allergic to amoxicillin. So if you ever need to get some medical procedure and they try to give that to you, tell them that you can't have that. And so like my whole body was like bright red and blotchy. And today I took my 4th dose of the medication to counteract that. And I'm finally feeling some sort of relief. Like my palms and the soles of my feet are like still on fire from like being itchy, and my overall body feels still relatively tender, which is very uncomfortable trying to sleep. Like, I haven't had very good rest this week, and I'm trying to not let that kind of personal part of my life affect the way that I'm reading. And, it's kind of hard when I'm having this whole body reaction and feeling very uncomfortable in my own body and having to read somebody like Darrow be annoying. And I'm trying not to like message Mychelé every single second and being like, here's an update. But I got to part 2, and this is going to be some mild spoilers. I think part 2 is roughly like 15% of the book. So if you don't want to hear anything at all, go ahead and skip ahead. I'll put a banner up. But at the very beginning, there's like a glimpse into the future where he has obviously infiltrated the gold, or he's trying to infiltrate the gold cast, and then we jump to like his current day where he's a red and he's mining helium, and we actually learned that his father was murdered because I guess he had like performed this song that has very heavily tones and thematics of rebellion against the planet and the government, and he was murdered because of that. And Darrow really has no reaction, and he's like, I just gotta grit my teeth and I gotta keep going. Sure. And then later on, him and his wife get caught like being outside of the boundaries that they should be, and the government decides to make an example of him, and they like whip him in the streets, and they like live stream this, and then he's kind of like, I'm gritting my teeth and I'm being a man. But then his wife gets dragged up and gets whipped, and he's like, no, my beautiful perfect wife, this can't happen. And then the government's like, that's not enough of an example. We're gonna murder you both. So they get publicly executed. And like, she goes first. The wife is publicly executed. And she like has this sort of gumption in the way she goes to her execution, where it's like she is rebelling against the government because she doesn't agree with this treatment. And like, Darrow, it's not clicking to Darrow. Like, he's just accepting that this punishment was earned for some sort of reason. And his wife is like, Darrow, you need to open your eyes to like what's happening here. And he's just like, what is this strange energy coming from my perfect, beautiful, angelic wife? Why does she have this grit and determination in her face? I just couldn't understand. I'm like, Darrow, wake the fuck up, brother. And the thing is I understand in books like this, you have systems that create propaganda that really brainwash and really take over the minds of the people. And I've seen that before. Like, sometimes we read books where it's like, you feel like you're in this really idyllic utopian world and something is just slightly off, and like that is the whole psychological experience of the book. But like in this book, Darrow's own coworkers are like, we're standing in our piss and this is terrible and I don't like this life. And he's like, well, we gotta do what we gotta do for the future generations, and we can't question our suffering, because if we don't suffer, then nobody else can live a beautiful, better future. And I'm like, Darrow, you can be sacrificial and you can do things that you don't like for the benefit of other people and to help build up your community, but you don't have to take abuse from the people who are serving you abuse. You have the autonomy to open your eyes and say, I want to build a better future, but I don't want the future to be built on the abuse of myself and my community at present. And like something is just not waking up in Darrow. And I'm like, brother, what the hell? Like, and it's like other people are like, damn, we're not eating food. We barely have any food. He literally questions whether his wife is selling her body so she can eat food. Like, he's aware that they're in a terrible position, and he's just like, it's the life I have to live. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So he gets executed, okay? And then these are the spoilers. I mean, we have been talking about spoilers. He gets executed, and then he wakes up and he goes, the execution didn't work, I'm alive. My uncle didn't fully, like, help with the execution, and so now I'm alive, and they're taking him somewhere. I don't know where they're taking him because I stopped reading for the night. And I think the only thing that is moving me forward on this read is why the hell they picked Darrow. I get it, he's a hell diver, so in terms of mining, he's probably one of the most skilled miners for helium. And so like maybe this like rebellion group is thinking, well, he's got the physique, like he's got like the physical aptitude to get things done. But he doesn't seem to be someone that I would think on like a mind level would be who I chose to help infiltrate one of the highest caste systems in the entire government, because he was already questioning why his wife seemed to have some sort of gumption to rebel against the people and the government. Like, I think that he needs to have a little bit more passion for me to get behind him being the chosen one in this book. And I'm like, of all the people the rebellion decided to pick, why didn't they pick his wife? Because she clearly had the gumption and the gall. And they're like, nah, we're picking Darrow. Mr. I like to stand in my piss suit and mine helium. I know Mychelé is gonna love watching this part of the vlog, and I am here to bring entertainment and joy into her life, and if me shitting on Darrow is going to bring her joy, who am I to take that away from her? We live in some pretty rough times, and we need to find joy wherever we can. You know, my skin is feeling like it's on fire, and so anything to distract me from that, even somebody as unlikable as Darrow, could be a win-win here. I'm trying to think as positively as I can, but I just know for a fact this is going to be a really long vlog. and at what cost. I'm here to do a 50% update for Red Rising. Do I have anything positive to say? I think the only positive thing that I have to say is that there's this scene in probably like the 30% mark where Darrow is going through this transformation, because obviously he is trying to infiltrate the gold caste system, and so he has to go through like his whole Princess Diary moment, and I think that was quite fun, to be honest. I think in any form of media, when we have that kind of cinematic scene, it tends to hit really well with me. I think one, because it establishes the sort of expectations that the society has, and then it also does quite a bit of world building, especially in like a fantasy and sci-fi type world. And so I think Pierce Brown really shines in that moment where we're getting to see how intense the society is and just how much of a physical trauma Darrow has to go through in order to become what is seen as the standard in this caste system. And it's quite brutal getting to see that. And I do appreciate the writing there. And I think because seeing the writing and how well that was laid out and mapped out, it is quite frustrating going back to the narrative and feeling like it's still clunky feeling and I'm not having a lot of investment in the character. I think especially with Darrow, I am sympathetic to him because I understand the oppression that he's going through, right? Like, that is very obvious. It's very written out that he is suffering. It's just a little bit hard to get behind Darrow as a character because he is just bopping about and everybody else is doing things and making decisions for him, and he's just going along with those choices. And it feels like there is a sense of agency that he is taking away from himself. Like, it's not even somebody else is making him do these things. Like, yeah, in a sense, the start of it kind of feels like somebody else kind of leading him in a certain direction, but he still has choices to make, and he's kind of just bopping about letting everybody else decide for him. And like, the only thing that is motivating him towards some sort of future is his dead wife, Io, and he will not let you forget that she's dead. And I haven't forgotten, because the fact that she was killed off so early still pisses me off. And it's just annoying that he is bringing up his dead wife consistently because there is no emotional impact on her death. That sounds terrible for me to say, and I apologize to her. I don't mean to disrespect her name at all, but it's like, we have no establishment of who she is besides her being Darrow's wife. And I think with emotional impact in any sort of story, you have to build a relationship rather well for you to have some sort of emotional payoff when somebody is lost, or there's like an injury or a death or some like really intense sort of plot line that happens with them. But Pierce Brown kills Io off in like 3 chapters. We don't even get an established relationship between the two of them, except that he's 16, they're married, she's in love with him her entire life, and he was kind of like blasé about her until like finally, you know, the hormones kicked in and he was like, oh, she's a girl and she's attractive. And like, every single time he talks about his wife, it's like, my beautiful, perfect, beautiful wife. She was just so beautiful. And because she was so beautiful, she shouldn't have been killed, because what a crime to have someone so beautiful die. And it's like, is there anything else that you could think of about your wife besides her being hot? Like, come on, Darrow. Like, it just doesn't feel like any sort of string of my heart is being pulled when he brings up his wife. It feels more of an annoyance, because it's like, I do know your circumstances. I do know that you lost her, but it feels like you're bringing up something that should be emotionally impactful but isn't. And because of that, it just makes it even more grating on the narrative to be like, yeah, I'm going to drag in my dead wife again. Like, let her rest in peace, would you? And then another thing about the narrative at 50%, I think just like the characters, especially the female characters, are just so bland. And I am somebody who likes diversity, obviously, in my stories. But it's getting to the point where I'm like, do we even need women in this narrative with the way that they're written in here? Because Darrow has gone to like this academy, right? And we are introduced to like one of the few female students that he is working alongside. And like the first thing that we talk about is how hot she looks. They're like, she has beautiful hair and her boobs are so nicely set and her body is so slim and her on that horse, she's just so sexy. And she's a bitch. And I'm like, okay, like I get we're in a militia school, so you have to be a little bit more cutthroat, but it's like, and obviously when you're looking at people, you're visually processing what you're seeing, but it's like any other female character that has been introduced has we like talk about how she physically looks and how her body looks, and then just how bitchy she is, and she doesn't like Darrow right off the bat, so she's a bitch, and it's like maybe we could go into personality and talk about why you think she's a bitch. But if there's no talk about, backing up why you think she's bitchy besides her just not liking you, I just find that addition to the narrative unnecessary because like what is it doing to the story? Like what are we building out besides like just another hot girl? And the thing is like the golds, they have like this very high beauty standard. So like everybody in their society is good looking. So I'm like, why is this what we are discussing right now? Because clearly that's not important. You're being oppressed. Your people back home are probably going through it. And you need to go through this academy so that you can infiltrate the golds and take over the system. But we're going to talk about how this girl is just so one of the most beautiful people you've ever seen. Even more beautiful than your beautiful wife, Io, which is impossible because she's like the epitome of beauty. But somehow they're more beautiful than her. It's just like, Mychelé, why did you make me read this? That's all I have to say. Pray for me. I don't think I'm going to continue this series because Darrow is just pissing me off. But the next time we check in, I'll probably have another rant for you, so look forward to that. Friends, I am free of Red Rising. I think I'm giving it a 2-star. So, at the end there, I think a lot of the complaints that I had, really just chalks down to character work. And as a character focused reader, me being compelled by a character is really necessary. And I've said this time and time again, I don't have to like the main character to enjoy the book, but I think Darrow's motivations and the things that were pushing him forward in the plot just did not grip me or feel convincing enough for him to be doing the things that he was doing. And I think it also chalks down to this thing with like the treatment of the female characters really bothered me a lot, especially in regards to the plot. Like a lot of the things that was moving the plot forward was unfortunately violence against women. Again, the minor spoiler of Darrow's wife, Io, that pushing him towards being recruited into this trying to take over the golds. And then later on, when he's in this academy and doing this like war training thing that they have going on, he ends up being motivated by a lot of violence against women. And the way he handles that just feels so, I don't know, I just did not like the way that it was handled. Like a lot of the other male characters were moved to do something or take action because another male character had sexually assaulted a female character. And the way the other boys handle it is just like so strange because they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he like assaulted this gold, but like it feels like they're more astonished by the fact that they assaulted somebody of like the same class level as them. And when they go about doing their justice, it doesn't seem like they really understand or really take into account what it means for the victim to have been assaulted in that way. And the way they handle their justice feels so much like a slap on the wrist, because then they end up being buddy buddy with the person who was the assaulter. Or there's commentary from Darrow's inner perspective where he's like, oh, I feel kind of bad for the guy. And it's like, Darrow. And I do understand with sexual assault, it is a very complex conversation to be having, especially in the perspective of a victim, because sometimes the person who is committing that crime against you, it can be a very complex situation with the victim. But in this case, we were seeing it from the perspective of Darrow, who was an outsider and not that like complex relationship with the assaulter, you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but in my head, like, it's just a different situation from a victim and from somebody who is observing. And I feel like Darrow, as an observer, didn't really take the gravity of that moment as seriously as I wish that the book had handled that. And yeah, it just felt like very gratuitous to continuously bring in violence against women as this pushing factor in the story. And we could have done so many different like political things. And especially at the last like 20%, Pierce Brown shows that he can build to a very complex, very intriguing storyline and motivation for the characters and betrayal that isn't violence against women. And yet, that happens to be some of the pillars and moments of the plot that gets highlighted very often in the book. And I was just like, I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired. And I'm so happy that it's over. Mychelé, you're welcome for reading this. I really pulled through. Halfway through, I really wanted to DNF the book, but I thought about you and I thought about what a great sister you are. And I thought I could sacrifice myself in this moment for you. And so I hope you're having fun. I hope you're on your couch. I hope you have a fun little drink. Maybe treat yourself to a nice little treat on me, on my suffering. Treat yourself. But I'm gonna go now and read Throne of Glass, and I'm gonna meet the baddie, the assassin, Selena Sardathian, and I will tell you a little bit about that when I get that book started. Hi everyone, let me update you on the second book of this video, which is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I am 25% into the book, and the basic premise of Throne of Glass is that we follow our main character, Selena Sardathian, who is one of the biggest, baddest assassins in the entire realm. She's only 18, so either she really is that formidable, or the rest of this realm is really slacking to have this 18-year-old woman just beat everybody's asses. But at the very beginning of this book, she unfortunately is imprisoned. She was captured from before, and we meet her where she's in the mines and she's mining salt, I think, some sort of material, and she's sentenced to do this for the rest of her life because obviously she's like assassinating people, so she's serving like a life sentence for taking people out. And at the very beginning, she is called to an audience, and she thinks that this is her time is up, that she is going to be taken out, and she's like, damn, I didn't get to escape this hellhole, and what a terrible life that I had to live. But instead, the person that she's meeting and having an audience with is the crown prince of the realm. And the crown prince proposes to her and says that if you agree to enter as the king's champion in this competition, I'm pretty sure it's to fight as to get the position for like the kingdom's assassin, she will be able to serve for about 4 years, and in 4 years of service, she can then win her freedom, and then she can do whatever the hell she wants. So she's like, Well, I'm Selena fucking Sardathian. Of course I'm gonna go into this competition because who the hell are the rest of these guys? I am the biggest, baddest that ever had been. So it's gonna be easy peasy. And then I'm gonna get off in 4 years, and instead of being fucking miserable in the mines, I'm gonna have my freedom. I'm gonna go frolic in the fields. And so she agrees. And that's about it at the 25% mark. Obviously, like the competition has kind of started, and there's like a little bit of a setup of the dynamics of her and the crown prince and her and the crown prince's bodyguard. His name is Kayal, CH something something. Put the spelling on the screen for you because when I listened to this book, I hadn't had the ebook yet to tandem read with. I thought the narrator was saying kale, like the vegetable. And I didn't question it because I know in Sarah J. Maas's other books, she's got like a guy named Rhysand and Tamlin. And I'm like, it's just fantasy. So a vegetable could really, be a name for somebody. I was wrong. It's not kale. I'm sure this is probably a running joke, but I actually know nothing about Throne of Glass, surprisingly, because I've been completely spoiled for ACOTAR and that whole like series that has been out. Completely spoiled for the Crescent City series, and I think that's all that's out. But Throne of Glass, I know nothing besides the name Selena Sardathian, and that's it. So I'm interested to see where this goes. I don't know if I'll continue this series. We'll see how the ending is. But I will say, in regards to writing, it is very easy to read. Obviously, I am at 25%, but like the flow of the writing just is so much easier and more digestible to read, especially with the dialogue. I think with Red Rising, I was having a hard time getting into the rhythm of the writing. And I think, like, as I said in another clip, it felt very choppy. And it felt that way a lot with dialogue as well. Like, it just felt like I couldn't get the rhythm right in the writing of Red Rising. And because that, I feel like it lacked rhythm because of the lack of it. It just felt so hard to get into the writing. Whereas here, I think Sarah J. Maas, it's not like she's writing in these beautiful prose or anything, but it's in a way that just is so easy to like read and digest, and especially dialogue. I think there is this thing with YA where the main characters, the conversations always have like this really quick and quippy back and forth and banter, and this is very much the kind of conversations that are being had between Selena and that Kale man. And I'm like, oh, this is fun. I feel like if I read this when I was younger, it would have really gripped me. But at this point, like, it's not like anything razzle dazzling me at this point, but it's fun. And I think choosing to read this after Red Rising, where I was just miserable out of my fucking mind, it's a fun one. It's fun to be reading this. There hasn't been anything too intense that has happened. And I think my friend Gabby had said that I should have read the novella The First Blade or something like that first, but because I'm not really thinking that I'm going to be continuing on with the series, I'm like, I'm just going to read book one and get it done. But yeah, I find it quite interesting to read, and it's like very serviceable, very fun. And I'm sure that the ending will be just as fun as it already has been. I want to see Selena in action because we've been talking that she's a bad bitch, but I want to see her like full out be a bad bitch. Like, I don't know if she's the type of assassin who's like, I don't want to be an assassin anymore, or if she's going to be like, I love this shit. I love taking people out. It would be fun if she were the latter. It'd be very interesting to be honest, because I don't think we ever get YA heroes that are like, I revel in the fact that I just take all these people out. So that's what my thoughts and opinions are. Very interesting that I know absolutely nothing about this series, because I think the only thing I hear is like Throne of Glass is not the book, but like the series is some of her best work, Sarah J. Maas. But yeah, I know like everything under the sun about ACOTAR. It's so interesting how just easily open and spoiled everything in that entire series is. I think like when I came into the book sphere and was like watching booktube and everything and like being on bookstagram, it just blows my mind how easily people spoil people for plot points. And it's like, yeah, whatever that the series is popular or whatever, but like specifically ACOTAR, there is like fan art that's just like, here you go, here's the entire plot synopsis, spark notes in this whole thing. And it's just like, did we used to not like find spoilers a little bit more sacred, you know, and we don't spoil people? But who am I to say? I have a little bit of a life update. I did my first ice skating class today, and oh my god, I've never ice skated ever in my life. This is like the second time I've ever been in an ice rink. The first time I was in an ice rink, I didn't skate, obviously. I was there for something else, and oh my goodness, it's an adult class, so the youngest is like 13 and up is like the age range, and there are a couple like younger kids in there and they're doing a great job, and I'm out here like falling on my ass. I'm like one of the only people who has fallen in class, and I will say I'm not like discouraging myself. Like I have a 3-month course. It's only like once a week, but I have a course that I'm taking to learn. And so obviously when you get on the ice, you're not going to be particularly like professional. I'm not an Olympian. And I think because like I've seen all my life the skating that I've seen have been from professionals, I just have it in my mind that it's like, oh, this is really easy and you should be able to do it. And the fact that like I'm falling and that I'm like really slow and that I have a little bit of anxiety is like, there's like a bit of a mental block, but I'm trying not to discourage myself. Like my friend, I'm taking the class with a friend, she was saying like, oh, well, you know, because you've fallen and you can get up, you know how to fall and you know how to fall safely. And that's something that like she's really scared of falling, but like she skates, like she does rollerblading. And so I think she's used to the kind of slippery feel of things. But she said like she's fallen with her skating, but she didn't fall at all with ice skating. So I'm like, I guess like everybody has to fall. Everybody has to be at a certain point. Like I'm sure Yuzuru Hanyu, when he first started skating, he just was falling everywhere too. And it wasn't that easy for him. But it's just like, yeah, sometimes when you're like the only one in the class that's like struggling visibly, it is a little nerve-wracking. So we're gonna go to like a free skate and practice some of the skills together before our next class. But yeah, hopefully I can just gain more confidence and, you know, not fall as much, because I feel like I'm like the weakest link in the class, and I don't want to be the weakest link. I want to be just as equal as everybody else. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because, you know, as we grow older, we still have opportunities to learn new things, and I think that's like something Mychelé kind of encourages me to do. Like I know on Instagram I had posted like this whole thing about like me doing like my first cinnamon roll bake, me knitting like my first sweater, and like doing a lot of things for the first time in 2026. And she had like commented and told me like continue having a lot of firsts in 2026. And I am doing my first ice skating class, and I feel optimistic about it, but I kind of wish that I was like a little bit further. But given it the very first time I've ever touched an ice skating rink, I think I did a relatively good job. And hopefully, the next time I tell you about my ice skating, I can just be a little bit more confident just moving forward. Like, I don't need to be doing anything crazy at this point. I just want to be able to like move across the ice and feel confident in my own two legs. I'm here to do a 50% check-in for Throne of Glass as I promised, and I would say that I'm having quite a bit of fun with this one. At the 50% mark, maybe a little bit before that, this competition that Selena is in, unfortunately, there are some would-be champions that are being killed outside of the kind of competition regulations that are going on. And so there's a bit of this murder mystery that's happening. And if you know me, I really do actually enjoy a murder mystery plot in a fantasy series. And this one is quite interesting because obviously it kind of leans to somebody wanting these champions to die so that one specific champion can win, but we don't really know that much about the deaths besides them being rather brutal. And I am quite intrigued with that plot specifically. I have a theory about it, but I don't think I will say what the theory is in case it's like a potential spoiler or anything. But I did message Mychelé the theory, and she thinks that it is quite an interesting theory that I have. I am hoping to finish it today. I'm glad that this one reads so much quicker than Red Rising, and it's so much easier for me to just like go in and out of the book and like feel very solid within the writing of it all. Given that it is YA, it's a little bit easier to digest, as I had said before. I had my apprehensions with this story and read, but it's not grating on me in any sort of way, and I'm glad like there isn't this overly negative point of view that we get from certain like female characters here, and there isn't like these grating kind of standpoints. Like there are things that I'm like, yeah, this is very like YA, this is very like young feeling in certain moments, but it's not so overly grating for me that I'm like, it's passable. Okay, I will let Miss Mass live this one time. I've not read any of her other books, but I feel like this one is, quite a simple and fun read, and nothing, too offensive to me. So I quite enjoy that I am not offended, because Red Rising really, really did something to me, and not a positive thing. I'm here to give you an update on Throne of Glass, which I have completed, and I think all in all, the story was quite fun. As someone who is a more seasoned fantasy reader, I don't think any of the plot reveals ended up being like incredibly surprising, but it was a very easy, quick, and fun read, and so I cannot fault Sarah J. Maas for giving us a fun time, and I think I'm landing on a 3-star. It didn't end in a way that was unsatisfying, like there wasn't a major cliffhanger, and I did enjoy the inklings of a potential love triangle blooming there. This might be a controversial take, but I personally love a love triangle. I think that love triangles add kind of like this fun, angsty tension, especially when you're not reading like a fan row. And like the romance section of it all is kind of like a subplot. It adds a bit more of not like a comic relief, but a relief from like the intense fantasy plot. And when a love triangle is written well, the will they, won't they of it all is really intriguing to me. And like there is, I think, an added layer of yearning that I really enjoy. And so I am a love triangle stan. So I'm interested to see where that goes if I end up reading it. And I have started Daggermouth. I'm 2 chapters in. So chapter 1 we get Grayson's perspective, and then chapter 2 we get Shadera's perspective. And so the basic plot and premise thus far is that Grayson is the son of the president of Newfound Haven, and his father is a very tyrannical ruler, and there's just a lot of societal pressure to be very stoic and stone cold and show no emotion, and then also to kind of stay within your societal boundaries and not to go out and, be with the poor and everything. And then Shadera, she is part of the like third tier, which is probably like the bottom class of this entire society. And she unfortunately has to be this kind of ruthless killer in order to survive. And she has become notorious in her area. She's part of like this rebellion gang that is going against the Heart, which is like the center city and capital where all the rich and the elite are, and which is where Grayson is part of. And so in chapter 2, she is given the job to assassinate Grayson. And she obviously hates him because he not only is the president's son, but he's also the president's executioner. So every time there are residents of the city that are breaking the laws, he is the one who has to, like, live on screen execute these people as a show of the president's power. But what Shadira doesn't know is that Grayson is someone who is incredibly reluctant to do so, and that he is also kind of going behind his father's back by sneaking out medical supplies to the lower rings of the city in order to provide for the less fortunate, and everything like that. So we have this setup where it's kind of this Romeo and Juliet, like two sides of a city that can't be together. And at the very beginning, it's very serious. Okay, like this is a dystopian society. They are ruled by a guy who is very intense, very scary. But at the very beginning, Grayson is performing an execution. And so when he's executing this couple, he has to read out their crimes. And mind you, this is live streamed. So he says that the charges are as follows: conspiracy against the Heart, illegal communication between the rings, fornication, and love across faction lines. Could you imagine? Okay, you're about to get taken out on a live stream to the entire city, and the guy lists fornication as one of your crimes. Like, how do you know what I was up to, brother? And why is that important right now? You know what I mean? And like, when I read that line, I'm feeling a little silly goofy this week anyway. But when I read that line, I was like, brother, you can't be serious. Like, I understand like the no crossing faction lines, and they don't want like higher society people to linger with the lower dregs of the society or whatever. That's not necessarily new of a concept in a dystopian world. But the fact that he had a list fornication, I was like, of all things, of all things. So we'll see how that goes. And because I know that this is a dystopian romance, and the fact that one of like the big crimes is to not fall in love with somebody from a lower faction, and obviously his love interest is going to be Shadira, I'm like, well, the guy is kind of wavering already, so it's not entirely surprising to me that he's gonna fall in love with this girl. I'm more interested to see how she will be won over by him, because like her hate for the Heart and the upper society of people is very believable and very intense. And the fact that Grayson is somebody who is like literally the top tier of her hatred is just so interesting. And I like the fact that she like is hired as a hitman to get him, and obviously they end up fornicating. I can't believe I said that. Anyway, I'll leave that in because I think Mychelé will find that absolutely hilarious. But I'm gonna go get ready for bed and read some more, and hopefully tomorrow I have some more thoughts about it. But thus far, 2 chapters in, there's not much that I have formulated in opinion. Besides that, I think the writing style is a lot more detailed than I anticipated and expected. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think when I think of dystopian, I imagine a little bit more of a very clinical kind of writing style, and this book isn't that. I'm here to do a check-in at 10%. I'm laughing at myself because I just was chatting and yapping up a storm and I had not pressed record. So let's take 2 and hopefully I can get my words out just the same as before. But I wanted to do a check-in because I have new thoughts that have formulated since I last checked in. I had only read 2 chapters. I've read another 2 chapters since then, but I think I have more of an opinion that I wanted to share at initial thoughts. And I think Shadira is a very compelling character to follow. She is very notorious and like a killer in her own right, and a lot of people fear her because she does her job very well, and she has taken up this task of assassinating the president's son, whose name is Grayson, and that's our other main character. I'm really interested from when they first meet and how that interaction will go. I'm assuming she doesn't kill him, obviously, because if that's your main character, and we got like 500 pages left of this book, I don't think he's dying on their first meeting, but obviously something will go awry for them to potentially have a connection. I wanted to add in that I have more opinions about their personalities. Shadira has this very closed off, very independent personality, but I don't think that is a personality by choice, but a personality due to environment, because it is a very cruel world that they're living in. And at this point, we know that her parents were murdered, and so she has these walls up to protect herself. But there's a new character that we meet in chapter 4. His name is Jameson, and it seems like they have a close, or as close as you can get to somebody who is purposefully, closing themselves off to you. They have a closer relationship, on top of the fact that they also are friends with benefits, because in chapter 4, they were going at it. I wasn't expecting it because I was reading a little bit of it before I had, during my break, before I had a meeting with my manager, and they were just really going at each other. And I was like, ooh, like I knew this book was going to have some, like, it's not a big deal that, people are banging each other at desperate times like these. Who am I to tell you not to have a little bit of fun? But I was just like, oh. And because this guy, I had no idea that he was going to exist in the plot, that I was like, oh, even more of a surprise. But I will say I'm very intrigued about his character, because now that I know that there's this friends with benefits kind of plot line going on, and then I'm very much assuming that the main lead couple is going to be Grayson and Shadira. I don't know how H.M. Wolf is going to convince me that this is a book that I am going to root for that couple, because it's just like, I don't know, the Jameson guy in that one scene, it just seemed like that is something that I could really get behind and I could really support, because there's more so desperation in their connection, because they know that any day now they could die, and I really like that kind of setup with a romance. I think that's something I can get behind, especially in dystopian, because these are 2 people playing on the same side of the team. Whereas with Grayson, I'm very well aware that he is wavering in his support of his abusive and tyrannical father, but I don't know, he just has a strange personality to me, and I think part of it is because I learned in the 3rd chapter or so, maybe it was in the 1st chapter, I'm not sure, but you find out that he's in his 30s, his early 30s, and I feel like he does not read like he's in his early 30s. But part of it is that he has this marriage set up, his parents have chosen this person that he should marry because he hasn't been married. And again, that first chapter, he kind of hesitates executing somebody, and the parents are like, this shit cannot fly because you are the president's son. The people of this entire city cannot see you hesitant and not see you waver in your support of our tyrannical rule. So they are setting him up to marry one of the most fanatical family in the entire like city. They are very known for their unwavering support of the president and all of his terrible, cruel behavior. They are like very in line with it. And their daughter is somebody who's like, she's drinking the Kool-Aid and she's, you know, to the roots, a horrible person, and she is indoctrinated, and they need somebody like that to be married to their son to show the public that he is also just as indoctrinated and nobody else can waver. But Grayson obviously is like not wanting to do that. But then he's like 33, and I'm like, I get it. Like, I'm 28. I am not married. You know, nobody's setting me up for marriage, but like, I feel like he doesn't read as somebody in his early 30s. As someone who's 28, I think I'm close enough to that level of maturity to like, I don't think my assumption of somebody in their 30s is wrong per se. He feels somebody like maybe 25, like he just got his frontal lobe, and he's really like, oh shit, maybe what I've been doing has been wrong, and maybe I don't want to be a part of this. And it feels like he's a little bit like I'm getting my feet like firm on the ground right now, and he feels a little unsure. And I would think at the age of 33, if I wanted to help a rebellion, I think I would be able to play the part a little bit more, especially if my survival is at stake here, because Grayson's father is a lunatic. He will do anything possible to keep his power in check, and he wants to make sure that everybody knows that he is the one in power. I think my issue here is Grayson has been living in this sort of situation since birth, and the fact that we see him waver so much from the very start, it makes me question, like, is he really gonna be that formidable of a foe for Shadira? And like, maybe that's why the romance is even a thing, because like, brother is not playing his role well at all. I'm gonna continue reading. Next time I will update you is at the 50% mark, and hopefully Grayson grows a little bit on me. But you know, Shadira, I'm behind her all the way. I hope she gets his ass. That's all I gotta say. Do you want to say hi, Mo? I don't know if you could see him there, but I am 50% of the way through Daggermouth, and I thought I would update you. And transparently, I was having quite a bit of fun with like the 20% mark. I mean, as much fun as you can when you are reading about a very cruel, brutal world like it is in Daggermouth. But I think when the main characters finally kind of collide and the plot point comes together, and this new plot point is introduced to kind of force them to be in each other's orbit. I won't say exactly what it is because I know Mychelé wants to read this book and I don't want to spoil anything here. So I'm going to speak as vaguely as possible. It just does not feel congruent to how the world is set up. Like, there is this very specific thing that happens and that is laid out and mapped out that just doesn't make any sense to the way the world is, like the foundational pieces of the world have been laid out for us. And I think primarily the reason why it is unbelievable is because part of this plot is pushed by Grayson's father, who is the president and like the tyrant ruler of this entire city. And the thing is he is shown as somebody who has so much, like, he is very rigid as a character, and if anybody goes out of line just by like a hair, he is not afraid to show you punishment, torture you, or kill you. So the fact that he is part of this plot to like he is like the momentum of this plot, it just feels weird and strange to his character, like especially from what we've learned of who he is. And then after that plot reveal, we get to see his cruelty in a very intimate way. We see him abuse his children, and also there is a very striking moment where we get to see the abuse he puts upon his wife. They are not of sexual nature, but it is quite a shocking read to hear the way he abuses his wife. And obviously, he is somebody who very much looks down upon women and thinks women are weak. And so the abuse that he inflicts on his wife is equivalent to that lesser of a human kind of vibe he brings around. And yeah, because we see how cruel he is and like on page and very detailed, and then to go backtrack into how we've gotten to the plot that we are in at the 50% mark, it makes no fucking sense. Like, it makes zero sense that this is how the characters are being held together. And it's kind of frustrating because I was having fun at the beginning, and then yeah, this plot point comes in and it feels like a lot of the momentum that I had with the book has been completely taken out of my sails. I will say at this point, at the 50%, a lot of the side plots and the background scenarios that are happening are very intriguing to me, because we are getting people from the Boundary, which is where our main character Shadira is from, and clearly there is some sort of plot of rebellion going on, or at least like just their actions are going on. I don't know, or have not been confirmed whether or not there's this big group of people who are actively trying to overthrow the administration or anything, but there are these little moments of rebellion that are happening that I find very intriguing, because clearly there is a wider plot and an information network that we have not fully been introduced to, and that is an intriguing point of the plot, and it really makes sense to the world, which I am enjoying. And I'm enjoying it to the point where sometimes there's scenes with Shadira and Grayson that I am like, okay, like, let's get over this scene. I want to see what's going on with like this other character, Callum, and Lyra, who is Grayson's sister. I think her perspective and point of view is quite interesting. And there's like a whole side plot with Callum and her, and then there's this other plot with Jameson, who is more so in like the Boundary area. There is like a lot of working pieces behind the scenes with these two separate plot points that is very intriguing. And I think because there's a lot of intrigue in those plots, it makes it so glaringly irritating that the first plot does not feel as heavy and as weighted as it should be. Like, I think if the introduction of the two characters was tweaked in a different way, I wouldn't be so upset about it. But because of the way the world has been laid out, again, with being very cruel, very brutal, there is no flexibility or any give, even with the president's own family. He could give a fuck about them, really. And he's only just using them as a means to his power. It just doesn't feel like something he would willingly choose or something he would agree to, yet he does agree to this like new plot coming in. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say now. I'm gonna finish the book, and the next time I check in with you, I will have my final thoughts. Hello everyone, I'm here to close out this reading vlog and give you my final thoughts and opinions on Daggermouth by H.M. Wolf. This book, I think, has some really strong points to it, and I think the author has a pretty solid writing foundation, and I think I've said it before, but I really do hope that in the traditional publication of this book that there is some editing that happens in this, and there's a little bit more refinement on the story in general, but I'm a little bit apprehensive on whether or not that is going to happen because of the fact that it's still available on KU. None of the physical prints are available, again, because it was indie printed, but now it's going to be traditionally published, so they have to stop those prints, but it's still available to read on KU, and I know that they can upload like a new edited file afterwards, but I don't know if they're going to do that for this. So we'll see. And I think my major constructive criticism is that plot point that happens at the 30%. I still don't think that it fits with how the world building and how certain characters are being told to us to be. There's like a certain element in how certain characters agree to this happening that have a higher power in the whole machinations of the entire society that I find quite unbelievable, that this is like one of the motivating plot points that is happening in this book. But I think besides that major plot point in regards to the two main characters, I think everything else about this story is quite intriguing, to be honest. Like, I think it is a very like baseline dystopian story. We have this very cruel world going on, and a leader who is very brutal and who very much shows disdain for the people that he's ruling over, which I just find incredibly interesting. Like, every dystopian novel has a ruler who could give a fuck about people. Like, they only care about themselves. And I don't find that kind of character necessarily compelling, but I do find how the people interact with a tyrant of this nature very compelling, and how like the other people in the society are working around manipulating that selfishness in order to gain their own power in the world. And I think H.M. Wolf shows inklings of that with like our character Callum. He has a very interesting set of skills and power within a world that is oppressing him, and he still finds himself having this range of agency that I think is quite interesting. And I think H.M. Wolf built out that plot quite well. And then also there is this plot that brings in a lot of other side characters later on in the story that I won't, detail too much. But I think that whole background perspective is very interesting and very intriguing. And I love the action of it all. Not that they're necessarily like physically fighting in all these scenes, but the way it moves the world is what is interesting about those plot points. Whereas I feel like with our main characters, Shadira and Grayson, because of that plot point that is introduced at the 30% mark, I feel like it kind of clips their wings, and it kind of stops the momentum of what we were having with that forward movement in like the first introduction chapters of their characters. I feel like because this plot was introduced, it completely stopped the growth that I wanted to see from our main characters. And I understand why the plot was kind of introduced, but it felt quite flimsy for me. And while it was introduced to, I guess, grow their romantic relationship, I don't think I was convinced of the romantic relationship at all, because one, the entire plot of this book happens within a week. The background plot point, you are given the illusion that it has been going on, because it's like, oh, we're telling you things that happened several years ago, and that's fine. We don't have to go into full detail about things that happened like a decade ago, right? But with this new plot point and the new main characters kind of meeting each other, that all happens within a week. And to convince me of their relationship and them having some sort of trust, I don't think the way they ended up meeting and the subsequent plots was believable to me. I feel like the direction of that plot, if I could, be in the writing room with H.M. Wolf, I would potentially see if that motivating plot could be changed, because I can see other ways that that plot could have changed in order to make it believable of their relationship being at an enemies to lovers kind of arc and having it make more sense. But I'm not the author, I'm not H.M. Wolf. This is how H.M. Wolf decided to write the book. And just for me as a reader, I feel like that foundation was not built well enough. And that's like one of my big criticisms, because they're the main characters of the book. It feels like a little bit unserious in regards to everything else that's going on. But I do think like the overall plot and the drama of it all, like I feel like the last 20%, there are certain character reveals, motivation reveals, drama that is given to us that like you read it and it's not like completely unbelievable, right? But it's just like so funny because there's certain, I can't say what it is, but there's like certain reveals of who certain people are, and you just have to laugh. Like it's not meant to be like funny, right? But like you just have like the what the fuck, like, and not in a bad what the fuck, but like, oh wow, like we are getting the drama, and I find that quite fun and compelling. So I think overall Daggermouth is getting like a 3-star from me. I didn't necessarily hate it, but yeah, I think that major plot point really, really, really took the wind out of my sails. And it was really frustrating to see that be the direction of the plot when there were so many intriguing ways we could have brought the characters together. And it just felt like that specific plot with the main characters did not feel strong enough. And I think it's more so highlighted that it doesn't feel strong because there's other elements in this world that is very contrary to what is happening. And then there's the other side plots that I think were built out a lot better and had a more convincing and understandable foundation to the story that, you can't help but compare plot points in the same book, right? So I find that if that plot was refined more, it would be a more well-rounded book, I think. And I will tell you, I had a much, much more fun time than I did with Red Rising. So I will give Mychelé that. Daggermouth, not a total waste. And I think Daggermouth was the one that she thought that I would like the most. And it is a 3-star, and I believe I gave Throne of Glass a 3-star as well. But this one was more fun. It was a little bit more inventive than Throne of Glass. I feel like Throne of Glass felt very just like a typical fantasy to me. It didn't feel like anything necessarily new or surprising. Whereas there were certain reveals in Daggermouth that I was like, I wouldn't have thought of this. It's fucking entertaining. And Red Rising was just something I'd like to forget personally. If certain people who are watching this who love Red Rising, I apologize that I really hated it. But that's just how things go. So in this vlog, I had read Red Rising, which I gave a 2-star. I could be convinced to give it a 1. So do leave your comments down below on as to why I should give it a 1-star. The Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, I gave that a 3-star. Enjoyable. I'm not sure if I will continue with that, but it's an easy read, easy breezy fun, and a good palate cleanser for this reading vlog. And then I finished Daggermouth, and that was a 3-star. It's like a higher 3-star. I think it was quite entertaining after I got over my frustration with the wider plot point going on here, because there's so many different intriguing things going on in the world that I could find my footing and kind of ignore the frustration that I was having with that. But it is a main plot point. Oh, and with Daggermouth, I wanted to add a little bit of a disclaimer. I do know that it is a dark dystopian, so do keep that in mind. There's quite a bit of violence in here, but I believe like around the 70% mark, there is discussion on child SA. It's not on page or detailed, but it is spoken about. And, I didn't expect that to come up in topic. And SA in general is a pretty sensitive topic for me in general, but especially child SA. So just to keep that in mind. I don't have the exact chapter, but I do remember it was around the 70% mark. So do be mindful of that if that is something that triggers you. Again, it's not detailed or on page, but it is like somebody in the present speaking about something from the past. So I did want to give that warning. I thank Mychelé so much for choosing these books. Did I have fun? At least with Daggermouth, I had a hee hee ha ha time at the end. So I will give Mychelé that. I will have her social media linked down below. She's on Instagram. I don't know if she's on TikTok because I'm not on TikTok, but I do know that she like posts on Instagram. So I will link that down below. Do check her out and do follow her. I had a fun time, and I think she will have an even more fun time watching me suffer through Red Rising specifically. I think she will love that part of this reading vlog. But thank you so much for watching this vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. If you made it all the way to the end, because I know this is a very long vlog, please leave some heart emojis down below. Any color will do. Maybe do rainbow. Let's just have a fun time. Let's do actually rainbow hearts, and then also do birthday cakes, because I'm pretty sure today when I'm posting this vlog is her birthday, Mychelé's birthday. So do leave some cake emojis down below for her. Wish her a happy birthday and tell her to please don't be mean to me like this again. That would be great. But if you enjoyed this video, do drop a comment, do like, and do subscribe. I really do hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!